welcome. So I have to say that I was totally disappointed that I wasn't able to go to Chicago for the convention in the streets that brought the issues of the people and for the people to the National Democratic Committee. Fortunately, 3 Mass Peace Action members were Keith Harvey, Brian Garvey, and MAPA intern Lee Kastevitz. I watched the videos that were on YouTube, but it was clear that they were not telling the whole story. They certainly did not tell the story of Keith, Brian, and Lee setting up a 75-yard banner representing the size of the U.S. military budget in relation to domestic spending programs or in relation to the military budgets of other nations. That didn't get there. I wanted pictures, I wanted stories, and I wanted to be able to experience through them some of what they experienced in Chicago. So I asked them if they would give us all a report. I'm sorry to say Lee cannot be with us tonight, so Keith and Brian will give us the story. For those who don't know them, I'll introduce them. Keith Harvey is the director for the Northeast region of the American Friends Service Committee, AFSC, a position that he has held since 1992. The American Friends Service Committee was founded in 1917 by members of the Religious Society of Friends, the Quakers, in the United States. It was established to provide an alternative to military service for conscientious objectors during the war. Over now more than a century, it has evolved into a nationwide organization addressing issues of peace, economic justice, immigrant rights, and criminal justice and healing. It works in the United States and overseas. Trained in the popular education model, Keith is a sought-after facilitator in workshops on nonviolence, criminal justice, and international debt-related problems related to, some might say created by, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Prior to joining AFSC, Keith worked in low and moderate income property development and management. Keith has been a member of the Cambridge Friends School Board of Trustees, the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute Board of Directors, which he chaired, and the Philadelphia Planning Committee for the U.S. Social Forum. He's active with the Massachusetts Poor People's Campaign as a member of its coordinating committee. And we are proud to say that he's a member of the Massachusetts Peace Action Board and of its executive committee. Brian Garvey is the newly appointed executive director of Massachusetts Peace Action. Brian served as assistant director for 5 years after joining MAPA as a volunteer. He initially joined MAPA's protests of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's red carpet treatment at MIT and Harvard, even as Salman pursued a criminal bombing campaign in Yemen. As assistant director, Brian co-led the Raytheon anti-war campaign, the National Yemen Peace Coalition, the War Industries Resistors Network, and the twin existential threats, Climate and Nuclear Disarmament United campaign. He has also led MAPA's communications, fundraising, and internship programs for the past couple of years. How he does all that is beyond me, but he's Brian, so he can. I'm now going to turn the microphones and screen over to them. As they talk, I hope that you will be thinking about the actions you can take, that all of us can take to stop the U.S. from continuing to send weapons and bombs, not just to Gaza, but to Ukraine and all of the countries that we supply. Excuse me. We'll be putting ready-made actions into the chat. War these days can't happen without us. We also hope that you're active in your own community. I bet you are. Standouts, marches, pickets, webinars, meetings, boycotts, films. Let us know in the chat. Fill us in on what you are doing in your community. And also, think about joining our Gaza committee Wednesday evenings at 5:30, or if you're inclined, our Ukraine committee. We can put in the chat again those meeting times and when to join them. You can indicate your interest in the chat, and we'll make sure that you hear personally about it. And finally, if you're in Chicago yourself, would you put that in the chat? And then after Brian and Keith have given their report, we can hear from you on your experiences. We will have a question and answer period, but we want to hear your experiences too if you were there. So let me turn it over to Brian and Keith.
Well, Mary, thanks for that fantastic introduction. And let me just answer that question, because people always ask us that, how does Mass Peace Action put out so much work? And the answer to it is because we're truly a grassroots organization. It's because of our members, it's because of our activists, it's because of our volunteers, our great core of interns. It's everybody pitching in together that allows us to put out so much work with such a small staff. So I want to reiterate Mary's ask. Please consider joining one of our committees. The work that Mass Peace Action does really does originate from volunteers and activists just like you. So a little bit later, Nicole will be putting a link in the chat for you to sign up for the Gaza campaign. And don't worry about capturing the links live. If you struggle with that, we will be sending a follow-up email with a recording that we encourage you to spread far and wide, but also with all of those links that allow you to get involved and to advocate for an end to war and militarism to your members of Congress who are allocating this money, your tax dollars, to fund end this war. But Keith, say hi to the people.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy folks can join us tonight as we do our report back. I think the wonderful thing about MAPA is that it's really a volunteer sort of led organization. The committees are active, and just want to reiterate, to don't be afraid to join. It's a welcoming community, and we need all hands sort of on deck as we move toward our peace and just trying to get rid of just guns, and just it's bad. And so that's the reason we're here, and let's see if we can make a difference. So thank you.
All right, with that, I'm going to share my screen. Bear with me because I'm usually on the other end of this, but I'm going to do my best with the technology. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes, so that black bar is there again.
Yeah, the bars are there again.
Okay, let me hide that. Hopefully you can't see it now.
No, it's still there. Oh.
Okay, that should do it.
Nope, it's moving around.
All right.
Down
How
to just
about now?
one small one. It's
How
down to
about
just
now?
one small one.
That's just my mouse. So like I said, I'm usually on the other end of this while our speaker shares their screen. So bear with us. So this is the program that you're viewing tonight. We're going to jump right into it. This sign that this gentleman held up at one of the marches. There were a number of marches on the DNC from Union Park in Chicago. Pretty much sums up why we were there. As you all are incredibly aware, we are no longer having Joe Biden as a candidate. Kamala Harris, vice president, has taken his place. And activists really want to know, what are the changes going to be? Is this just a change of face and name, or is the policy surrounding the ongoing genocide in Gaza going to change?
Brian, I just want to say the pop-ups are there again. I don't know if you can see them.
Okay. All right, that should be taking care of it, but we'll do our best. Cole, if you can admit people as they come in, that'll help.
Yep, I'm doing so.
Thank
There's only
you.
one
Appreciate
pop-up there now. It's in the lower right.
Okay.
Below the Kamala Harris sign. Anyway, we can see.
Bear with us.
Let's make the best of it.
All right, here's a little explanation of why we were here. As Mary was saying, we sent back lots of videos, and I want to thank our video editing crew who helped us put these together, especially Randy Worster, who's a volunteer with us, and Lee Stevens, the intern that Mary mentioned, who actually joined us in Chicago and took a lot of this video and edited it as well. Massachusetts Peace Action has made the trek to Chicago.
Ceasefire, obviously, and an arms embargo.
A coalition of American Jews fighting to end the apartheid in Israel-Palestine.
We don't want a genocide to continue in Gaza.
U.S. claims that it wants a ceasefire, but then continues to send $20 billion of weapons. So many amazing people are out here, and I think we're coming from a lot of different political spectrums, but we're united on wanting to stop this genocide.
Massachusetts Peace Action has made the trek to Chicago. We'll move on to the next slide. Massachusetts Peace Action. And just to follow up on that, and Mary alluded to this earlier in her introduction, we got a picture of Senator Sanders here, because that $20 billion sale of more U.S. weapons to Israel, Congress has a chance to block it. Like all weapons sales to foreign countries, Congress has the ability to file a joint resolution of disapproval within a certain amount of time. And Senator Sanders has pledged that he will lead that effort and introduce a joint resolution of disapproval. He can then exercise his privilege in the Senate and bring that to the top of the agenda and force every U.S. senator to go on record as to whether they support or oppose this weapons sale to Israel. So it's an opportunity to block these weapons, but also an opportunity to make these folks come out of the shadows and really sign their name by this. If they support these weapons, this continued facilitation of the genocide in Gaza, they're going to have to put their names on it, and it's going to be part of their record. So we've created a tool that allows you to send a message to your senators and your representatives in the House as well, saying that you would like them to co-sponsor this measure, to submit it in the case that Senator Sanders doesn't. I don't think that'll be the case, but we can ask Senator Markey and Warren here in Massachusetts, and you can ask your senators if you're outside of Massachusetts to do the same, but also to support the measure and to talk about it and publicize it and oppose the continued selling of weapons,
Hey, Brian.
as well as weapons transfers. Yep.
Brian, if the bottom of the slide is telling people where to go and what to do, it's covered over. So maybe Cole can just put that in the chat.
Cole is going to put that in the chat. Let me move that, because apparently the settings are bedeviling me. But as you can see, you can go to masspeace.us/block US weapons to Israel. That'll take you right to a page that will ask for your address. It will automatically look up your members of Congress and allow you to, in about 30 seconds, send them a message that says that you not only oppose these, but that you expect them to use their platform and their power to oppose these weapons sales to Israel in the midst of a genocide. As Mary said, Cole will be putting that in the chat. We'll also be putting it in a follow-up email, and please do share it widely. Our representatives need to hear from as many people who oppose this genocide as possible. This is another reason why we went to Chicago. This is a video that was put together by Lee Stevens. That's just a list of the infants that never reached their first birthday that we know of. We talked to many activists who turned out for the several demonstrations that we attended. One of the most important groups is If Not Now and the Not Another Bomb coalition, of which they are a member. I will let you hear from them.
So Not Another Bomb is calling for an arms embargo. They're trying to make that into policy within the Biden-Harris administration. Without the uncommitted movement, we would not have had a change in the Democratic ticket. It is because of the work of the uncommitted movement that Biden realized he needed to step aside. Our Reject AIPAC movement, which is seeking to get AIPAC money out of our democracy. AIPAC is just as toxic to politicians as the NRA.
So you were able to hear there from the activists themselves. I think one of the most important things that, well, I knew a little bit about it before Chicago, but hearing it from so many people over and over again was very heartening. And that's that over the course of this onslaught, US facilitated Israeli onslaught of Gaza, the demands of activists are evolving as well. I'm sure many of you have heard ad nauseum over and over again calls for a two-state solution to solve the Israeli-Palestinian problem. That is not forthcoming. And of course, we do not have partners in Israel that are in power. Talking about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly, who is outwardly and adamantly opposed to a two-state solution. That's not good enough. So the calls for ceasefire after this war escalated, after the attacks of October 7th, we've all heard those. We've all taken part in those demonstrations. And we've heard from the Biden administration and from Vice President Kamala Harris, as well as the national security team of Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, that a ceasefire is just around the corner. It's just weeks, it's days, sometimes even hours away. And then they break down. And those calls for ceasefire are now being seen as not enough. Of course, we need a ceasefire to end the devastation in Gaza, but this new demand that is really catching on of not another bomb, no supporting U.S. weapons to Israel, I think is the correct one. So that is something that I've been heartened to see as well.
So Not Another Bomb is calling for an arms.
Is happening, but as I said, bear with us. And Keith, feel free to chime in.
Yep.
And here, in fact, I think it would be appropriate if you talked about this. This is a vigil that we attended on Montrose Beach, or just next to Montrose Beach, led by AFSC. So I'll turn it over to you, Keith.
Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to do a vigil service committee led by our staff in Chicago. We have an office in Chicago. I do want to say that the office was opened up, a place called Grace Place, as a respite for folks who were doing protesting, and also for folks to do some organizing to kind of get away from some of the actions. And so there was a number of things that we did. So our staff, and I'm going to bring Joe Gerson in on this. I'm going to call your name out, Joe. Jennifer Bing is our sort of Middle East Palestinian activism program, heads up that program. And Jennifer was an intern with Joe back in the day. And so to see Jennifer and her organizing efforts right here, you'll see we did a vigil, put the word out, and people showed. A lot of the DNC, a lot of what most everybody who was there protesting and doing different things, it was about Gaza. And a lot of it was how we're complicit in what's happening in Gaza. Our AFSC staff has seen what's happening in Palestine as apartheid and genocide. And so folks have came you know, and we had a wonderful vigil of, you know, folks showed up, spoke, and offered ways forward and what we needed to do. And so it was good organizing. And also, this was the first time we actually were able to pull out our little bit of an exhibit, you know, is publicly for folks. So, Brian, you might want to mention
Yeah.
this also.
Steve, before you do, could you tell us where this is?
It's in Chicago. It's at Montrose Beach, right off of Lake Michigan. It was just a space that it's sort of a park area that people come, and this was the area that we could use to do the vigil.
How close is this to where the DNC was taking place?
It's not very close. It was clearly off-site. We kind of put the word out there. There was a lot of police there. And you could tell in Chicago that they were very, you know, you kept hearing in the background 1968, 1968. And so I think there was a big, huge police presence, federal presence, and also many folks in Chicago took a lot of that week off. You know, we may, you know, every now and then we had an Uber, or we were getting, you know, some of our Chicago staff help get people to different places. And they were like, man, there's no traffic. You know, it's never like this. So that was also part of what we saw.
So give us a sense of what it was like. Were people generally welcoming to you? Were people standoffish? Was there response and reaction in the streets? I mean, what was it like to be there?
Sort of, Brian, what do you think? I mean, we were pretty receptive. There wasn't anything that, you know, nobody was like in our face for anything or anything like that.
You know, people were incredibly receptive, and I have to say that the organizers from all of the different organizations that put together the several events, and this one, while in Chicago, was far away from the DNC, but many of them were marches on the DNC, and even, you'll see later, sit-ins at the DNC. Those organizers were, well, incredibly well organized, and the police presence that existed there, we're talking about thousands and thousands of cops that were there. Reports were that they spent something like $17 million on the police protection because we're, you know, such a dangerous bunch of peace activists. And I think a lot of that was federal grant money, so U.S. taxpayer funded. You pay taxes in the United States, you help to pay for those cops. There was no violence and very few arrests for how many protesters were there. I think a lot of folks were worried, as Keith was alluding to. 1968, the protest against the Vietnam War that happened at the Democratic National Convention. This was not a repeat of that. There was no.
So how many people do you think were there?
Oh, it's hard to say. Over the course of the entire week, well over 10,000, I would say. But it's hard to get an accurate count. Keith, do you have a guess?
Yeah, it was in that 10 to 15,000 sort of. You know, you can kind of get a sense of that at the park. You know, but you'll see as we get through them.
Yeah, so let's go to our next slide. Keith, talk about
yeah, so my idea, where it came from. I'm going to mention Joe Gerson again. This happened in, I think it was 1986 in Vermont during tax day. And so this was one of those things that I saw when I was going through archives, and I was like, man, I like this. This makes a statement. And as you can see, that white strip there is the military budget and how they had it go all the way into the Vermont State House. and into the rotunda area to make a statement around our spending. And I thought, boy, this might be something we can recreate to be able, and my goal was to have a larger exhibit to start a conversation, sort of educate folks, and to have folks begin to question and see it in a big way. Our military spending and how out of control it is compared to our other things and human needs that we need. And so that's so I wanted to just say, this wasn't like Keith came up with this idea. No, that, others did back in the day. And so just wanted to give props to those folks. Right. So our thing, when we put this together, we wanted to show the military spending. We wanted to show that, we now spend $921 billion on our military. That does not include our policing or the federal police piece. It does not include the money that we are sending over to Israel right now. And so this is just the military stuff, and it's stark. And compared to the next 9 countries don't reach what we spend combined, them combined spending in their militaries don't what we spend. And so we wanted to highlight that, start that conversation. And so we found fabric. I took all the fabric from Michael's stores, and Brian and Lee were absolutely wonderful in being able to help put this together. We wrote on the fabric, the 921 billion, and we kind of figured out that every step you take as you walk down that long red strip, actually red and orange strip, because we ran out of red and we kind of threw orange at the end, is that every step is about $12.3 billion. And so we wanted folks to see that, to take those steps, to walk all the way down, and to kind of have a experiential sort of thing in looking at what we're trying to bring to them.
What was the response to it? What did people say?
People were engaged. People, at the protests, we pulled it out. We weren't able to make the first protest, but we were able to do the second, because we were trying to put it together and bring everything together. Our materials didn't arrive in time, and so we had to use one of those days to kind of put everything together. And
So what day was that? You say the
that-
first or
that was
second,
a
but we were
Monday.
here.
That was a Monday. We were expecting all the materials to be in on Monday. We kind of got everything in on Tuesday, and we worked all day, and we had it ready, and we just scouted out different parts of Chicago to lay it out, because we wanted to be able to video it, take pictures of it, and use social media to highlight our message. And then also we were then able to then put it out during the demonstration. So as people were gathering at the demonstration, they saw the exhibit, people would come by, talk, interview, media were curious by it. We had drones flying over. I don't know if it made the news or not, but those are the kind of things that we saw.
So you probably had a few thousand people see it.
Easily.
Oh, certainly.
Mhm.
And just to chime in, we know why our materials arrived late, don't we, Keith?
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Evidently, any kind of package that was coming into Chicago was delayed so that they could open it up and check it out. And so everything was getting searched coming in. UPS, US Postal Service, didn't matter. They were checking everything coming in Chicago.
All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide here.
Mhm.
This video that was taken by Lee and edited by Randy kind of captures the experience of what it's like to walk those steps. So have a look. plug for our webinar there at the end. I'll advance
Incredible.
this.
You really get a sense, you really get a sense of it, and it's just shocking.
Yeah, it is. And we wanted, and I'll let you chime in here, Keith, but I'll just say the reason it's so large is because it's so hard to picture what $921 billion is. So Keith's idea, of course, inspired by those folks in Vermont, was to make something gargantuan. So people could really consider what their money is going and how few steps it took to get to what we spend on healthcare, right? You stand at that sign that says, this is what we spend on health, or this is what we spend on veterans in this country. And then you just look at how far the military budget goes on from there. And it really gives you a sense. And one thing that was great was when we rolled this out at the big march to the DNC that happened on Thursday, was we got there early. So as people gathered, they walked past our installation and people stopped and they took this walk that you just saw on the video and asked us questions and really got into a dialogue about why we spend so much money on the military and so little on everything else. I like to say it's why we can't have nice things in the richest country in history of the world. But Keith, a few more words on our installation.
Yeah, I think ultimately I was very pleased with the engagement that people had with it. I see that we can use it. And I see this as a really good joint collaboration between the Service Committee and MAPA, and that it's there to be used by anybody. There's no propriety on it. And we can use it during tax days. We can use it, during Armistice Day or something. We can do it on the Common. We can do it in Cambridge Common. We can do it out in Western Mass. And so I'm just saying, I think we have something that we're gonna build off of. And I think, we'll kind of make it a little bit prettier and probably as easy as possible to set up. But I think there's something there that we can use at least for the next year or two.
It would go down the entire downtown of Northampton, I think. And it wouldn't go down the entire downtown of East Hampton because you got to turn a corner.
Mm-hmm.
But it might go from Richard Neal's office all the way to Warren and Markey's offices in Springfield.
So those
There
are some
you go.
opportunities. Yeah, those are
That's a good
opportunities that
idea.
we can think about. Yeah. I do want to just say two things real quick, just with regard to the Chicago staff. I thought they were really welcoming, and they provided some really neat outlets. It was clearly Gaza pieces and organizing. And so even they did silk screening for shirts and stuff. And so you'll see that we did these little things that everybody was able to do and provide it. And so just wanted to say that that was really a unique kind of thing. And I think it was very successful. And we were able to find lodging in a really good way too, so that we could do things. Well, I'll be quiet now, Brian.
Oh, I was gonna let you keep going. But I'll share again. And one of the reasons why we did this at the DNC, as many of you probably know, it's not just for nominating the candidate. This is where they agree on what their party platform is as well. And one of those things that is discussed, not nearly enough, you'll see, I think I quoted it in full, the section on defense spending, which represents more than half of every federal tax dollar, that line item on the paycheck that says federal income tax. More than 50% of that dollar goes to defense spending. And it's just a tiny section of the Democratic platform. But we can show it in their own words.
Uh-oh.
I think you can see
You
this
might
now.
have to read that to us.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, there you go.
I will. Yeah, forgive the floating thing. We can move it around. But as I said, in their own words from the Democratic platform, they believe that the measure of our security is not how much we spend on defense, but how we spend our defense dollars and in what proportion to other tools in our foreign policy toolbox and other urgent domestic investments. So they believe that we can ensure our security, restore stability, predictability, and fiscal discipline in defense spending. And they identify some of the problem here. That's why I highlighted it. They said we spend 13 times more on military than we do on diplomacy. Spend five times more in Afghanistan each year during that war than we did on global public health and preventing the next pandemic. And the Democrats, according to them, in this brief bit that they did spend on what amounts to more than 50% of your federal tax dollars, they say that we can maintain a strong defense and protect our safety and security for less, and it's past time to rebalance our investments and improve the efficiency and competitiveness of our defense industrial base, conduct rigorous annual audits of the Pentagon, and end waste and fraud. So they're identifying part of the problem, the official position of the Democratic Party platform, and this was also the case 4 years ago at the convention that nominated President Joe Biden. They think that defense spending is too high. But what did they do about it? In the last 4 years, defense spending, which doesn't include the money that we send to Ukraine or to Israel or to any other country who we send weapons to. It doesn't even include nuclear weapons, which is in the Department of Energy, for instance. That spending has gone up. It has gone up year after year. So even though they know defense spending is an extreme problem, they haven't done enough about it to beat back the ever-growing Pentagon budget, which strips us of the money that we need for human needs at home. So I just wanted to include that. It's not addressed much, not addressed enough in the Democratic platform, but they know it's a problem. So it is something that we can try and hold them to.
Do you have more photos and videos for us?
We have a couple more for you, and then we'll open it up. Here's just a few more pictures of different places where we set up. And here's a great shot of Gray's Place and our fantastic intern Lee, who unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight, but was instrumental in all of the video that we took and in actually creating this art installation with us.
Yeah, Lee was amazing. He was full of energy. Yeah, really good find as an intern.
Yeah, he's not here with us because he had to leave Chicago and go straight back. I heard about his odyssey and how little sleep he got, but he stuck with us for as long as he could. But he is back at Hamilton in New York State right now, where he is also helping to lead that college's SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine. He was an organizer of their encampment that they had at Hamilton, and is making lots of good trouble out there in New York State.
So I may be jumping ahead, but
go ahead, Mary.
what did you see of the sit-in at the DNC? What did you witness of that?
Well, in fact, we're about to get to that. And I won't read this in full, but a little bit about the uncommitted or no preference here in Massachusetts movement. As if folks don't know, I think they probably do, so I'll be brief. But during the presidential primary, what there was of it, some great activists, really in Michigan, started this, but it spread all over the country for folks to show their dissatisfaction with President Biden's policy and support and facilitation of this war. Folks voted uncommitted or no preference, over 700,000 voters across the country, 60,000 here in Massachusetts. This is a movement that MAPA supported. They really helped with the decision of President Biden to step aside. They showed their disapproval for this policy in particular. There's a lot of reasons why folks were unsatisfied with President Biden and his tenure in the White House. But this movement is continuing. It wasn't just a one-off in the primary. The uncommitted movement is still doing things. They are really the force that's behind this evolution of the demand that has gone beyond ceasefire and is now saying no more weapons to Israel, not another bomb, which I think is an incredibly strong demand. And one thing they did that I think was incredibly impactful was they sat in at the DNC.
Do you have any photos of it?
Yep, we do. We do. And we also have some testimony. But their demand was simply to have a Palestinian American get up on stage. It was 4 nights of about 6 or 7 hours a night, and they wanted 2 minutes for a Palestinian American to speak. And the names that they put forward were, I mean, they were trying to get a state rep from the important swing state of Georgia to speak, a Democrat who supports Vice President Harris and her bid for the White House. And unfortunately, they were refused, and that's why they sat in. Here's one picture. There was some great coverage on Democracy Now! Among other outlets, but I want to credit them because they were right there. These folks stayed up all night, some of them sleeping on the concrete, actually, outside the DNC to try and grab as much attention as possible. And if I haven't said it before, it bears repeating. But Chicago, where the DNC was held, has the largest population of Palestinian Americans of any metropolitan area in the United States. So the ask to have a Palestinian speaker on that stage expressing their views was not an unreasonable one. And I think it was a missed opportunity by the Harris campaign. Do you have any words to share? We do have some testimony from one of the sitters in, but Keith, do you want to chime in?
No. I mean, I think we can move forward. So some of the folks that we were with were really trying to get there and be in solidarity with them, as we move forward.
Yes, but as we later heard, and as folks who headed over there found out, they cordoned that area off pretty quick with that huge police presence to try and keep people away, to try and keep coverage away, and keep the sit-in from growing. Many people, including this woman who's with Code Pink, who I talked to, said the logistics were a nightmare because they wouldn't let people leave, because if they left, they weren't going to let them back in. So things like food and water became an issue. But let's hear from her. What's your frustration level with the Democratic?
I'm heartbroken, and like having been through that with them, that could cost my allegiance. Absolutely, because it's such a minimal request, and the thing that is at stake for them is so high. The story that I heard was that they'd offered option after option, candidate after candidate for a speaker, and they were all ruled out. They weren't given explanations as to why. They were listing off the things that did get representation. Donald Trump's press secretary, Burr, was up there. Palestine's a big deal. I have a cold feeling about trying to hide that in any way. Like really watching them empathetically would be inconsistent with the vote for the Democratic Party.
And I think that's how a lot of people feel right now. There's a lot of frustration. I mean, there's still time for the Harris campaign to reach out to these folks and let them have their say. I do think that the protests have been making a difference rhetorically, but it's simply not enough, and people are not going to be satisfied with rhetoric.
So the last one funny thing is we actually purchased a drone. We were going to try to get like a sky view of the exhibit and all sorts of stuff, and didn't quite work out. But we got to find some people to play with it so we can control it. But anyway, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, and one last thing on the installation, it has room for growth. We can make it bigger, we can make it better, and we can take it on the road. I love the idea of taking it and stretching it between Richie Neal's office and Markey and Warren's office, make a point. And we can do that in cities and towns across the Commonwealth, and folks can make these on their own too and do the same thing. It grabs attention.
Well, that's extraordinary. I still wish I could have been there.
Would have been good to have
So
you.
if you all are ready, I'd like to go to questions. But I also would like to know, there's 51 people here, but that includes us. So there's like 45 or so, 40. If anybody else was in Chicago, if they would say so, but also, can people put in the chat, and then we'll be able to capture that, what you're doing in your community? Because I think that's really important. We've also already had one person say they want to know more about the Gaza committee, and I think they said they want to join. So we would really welcome you. And all you have to do is put in the chat, and one of us will get back to you. But can you truly put in the chat what you're doing in your community? Because it's really important to know what everybody is doing. You know, we're all doing whatever we can, but it's important to know what our neighbors are doing too. And with that, we can go to questions. You can raise your hand. And I already see that Jeffrey Barktel has raised his hand. And then we'll start there.
Why is it so
But
hard?
really, it's important to me personally, I will say, to know what people are doing. I don't want to feel like it's just a few of us, because I know it's not.
As I was saying, why is it so hard for people to pronounce my last name?
I don't know. People can't pronounce mine either, and you'd think they could.
Anyway, that's not the question.
Sorry.
But anyway, I got a couple of ideas that could help in the protest. Would you like to hear them? One of them included what some people did during the Russian protest against the war. You know how they left figures out and with the protest signs out. Now they couldn't arrest anyone for that because there was no one to arrest. Literally. Do you think that first one's a good idea? I can. Plus, I would like to try to be your video editor for you guys if you want to hire me. That is.
It's like we have another volunteer.
So also, if you say where you're doing things, please say what town it's in. So please be sure to say where you're doing what you're doing. Is there another hand that I can't see?
And yet I think people are shy.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to say this name right either. My only excuse is that nobody says mine right either. Rana Bazzini. You're muted.
Okay, well, you have to unmute me. Am I unmuted now?
You're
Are.
good.
Well, you said my name perfectly, and I don't give a shit. I mean, my father, my own father could never spell it. I'll always mispronounce it, but I don't care. It does not bother me. I'm from Sarasota, Florida, and I have been working first of all, I have to say, I don't know how I discovered you guys, but the minute I did, my heart went up. I thought, oh my God. And of course, I lived in Connecticut for many, many, many years. And so I'm not really a New Englander, but I'm sort of a New Englander. And what I wanted to suggest, because people and stories are so important. And do any of you remember Granny D or Doris Haddock from New Hampshire?
Yes, yes. We and the Raging Grannies sing a song to her. I want to be like Granny D.
That's exact. Well, because I do the commemoration thing for her every January. I don't go up to New Hampshire, but I did a mini walk in remembrance of her. When I was 81, I walked from Sarasota to Tallahassee just because of her. And if people should look at her, because she was 89 when she walked across the whole United States for campaign finance reform. Now, there's Googles of her, there's excerpts of her. She was so incredible. And you could use her today because she's addressing what you guys are addressing, not the specific war thing, but the money and the influence of money. And she was doing it, what, 20, 30 years ago, whenever the hell it was. So I would use her in some of your promos because she was so phenomenal, so phenomenal. And it was long, if social media had been around when she did this, I think the world would have been different. I really and truly do. And that's all I had to say. I just love you guys. I'm working with a thing called the SEE Alliance, SEE Alliance. It's young people, and it's society through education and equity, whatever. And the guy who runs it, you may have heard of, his name is Xander Moritz. He was very famous a couple of years ago when he graduated from Sarasota, because he gave us, he's gay, and he was going to give a speech about being gay, and he was warned, don't you dare do that because you'll be cut off. So he has very curly hair, and he wrote a speech about being bullied because of his curly hair. It was phenomenal. And he's taken a year off of Harvard to start this SEE Alliance. And I understand it is national, but I'm working with the Sarasota group, and it's young people, and they're wonderful. And you guys are wonderful. And whenever I have some spare bucks, I'll send it to you. But wonderful the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ron.
That's great. So I'm going to call on Carl, but meanwhile, we have somebody in the Bay Area who presents films and forums. We have somebody in Arlington who does standouts. We have somebody in Vermont who talks to people, which is really important, to just talk to people. Speaking of which, Carl, talk to us. Carl Stillwell. And you have to unmute us. Unmute yourself.
Okay. That list of all the Gaza babies killed before their first birthday was beyond moving, and I would like to see that posted on and on and on social media. People got to know.
And I want to credit Lee Cass-Stevens again for putting that together. Right? It doesn't need to be complicated. There's not a lot of it's silent, it's black and white, but boy, does it get the message across. And we will we'll send a link to that in a follow-up email as well, so you can share it. Is that it,
Carl?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, then that goes to Tony Palumbo.
Thank you also, Miss Susan I, but let's go with Tony.
Well, but Tony's hand is up first according to my screen.
Best to look at the participants list, Mary. That shows the real order. But anyway, let's go with Tony.
Yep, you got to unmute yourself. It should have just prompted.
All right, I think Susan was first, but let me just say, asking what we're doing. In Watertown, we hold a weekly vigil from noon to 1 in Watertown Square. We've been doing it since the beginning, and we will continue to do it. Just also, I just happened to be at a meeting of another group in Watertown called Watertown for Palestine, and we were talking about some activities that we might do together. That's Watertown Citizens for Peace, Justice, and the Environment. And one of the things we were thinking of is what could we do to, when we come to a year of the genocide. And a couple ideas were thrown out, maybe a mini march in the area, But another idea was a candlelight vigil. And we wouldn't do it on the actual October 7th or for obvious reasons, but we would do it sometime in October and possibly bring that together and invite other communities, our friends in Arlington and Lexington who have done some great work, as well as our friends in Newton, and possibly pull together a large vigil with a couple of speakers on a cold October evening. But just to say, we're thinking of some ideas. Thank you.
So before I call on Susan, I just put into the chat, I'm part of the Western Mass Coalition for Palestine that is planning something for October 5th, because it turns out that there is a nationwide shut it down for Palestine being planned for October 5th. So I've just put that in the chat. I think we might also do something in Springfield that next day or on the 7th itself for in Springfield. But just so people know that. Anyway, Susan Nye.
Go ahead, Susan, you're unmuted.
Oh, I have to start video, I guess.
No, you can just talk. We don't have to see you, though we'd love to.
We can see you. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You are.
Well, yeah, thanks, Tony. This is for Keith. Sounds like you're with AFSC.
Yes.
Yes. Are you able to say anything about the Apartheid-Free Communities program?
A little bit.
Okay.
Apartheid-free community that was organized by our Middle East program a little bit. Jennifer Bing has been a big leader there, and you will. I can find the link. I need to look it up, but there's a Friday. Every Friday there is a sort of a check-in webinar update on what's going on and actions you can take, and information of what's going on. And so that's sort of part of that apartheid-free kind of place. They see what's going on in Israel as apartheid. That's beyond Gaza. It's clearly in the West Bank now and other places. And so that's sort of where the organizing is happening and trying to build off of that. I have minimal information on that, but I can lead you to the website and also the Fridays sort of check-ins.
Yeah, that'd be great. It occurred to me that a lot of people on the call might have not even heard of it, and it's a great program. Yeah, thank you.
Can you continue? Can you include it in the follow-up?
I will do that in the follow-up. I'll try to get it right now and put it in the chat if I can too.
Okay, thank you.
So next is Karen Slater, and I know because I've seen the photograph that she was in Chicago. What do you have to say, Karen?
Hi, everybody from Massachusetts. Miss you all. I just want to quickly go over a couple of things. I noticed that there was why weren't there so many people there? There was supposed to be 30,000 or 50,000. So most of the people that I talked to at Union Park said Kamala. That was the reason. And that she ignited the African-American community. She's ignited the young people's community. And you have to realize, like Massachusetts, Illinois is very much in the pocket of the Democratic Party. The mayor, the governor, everywhere you look, if you look at any kind of map of the United States, who's voting Democrat, it's Illinois. So that's kind of the answer to that one. So we have a African-American Chicago mayor, and we have Pritzker of the Hyatt Hotel money as our governor, and they both were very much part of the Democratic Party convention, and also controlled a lot of what the movement was going on with the police and others in the park and on the marches. So the other thing is that I wanted to just really quickly talk that not only did we, I was great talking to Brian at the Cuba Coalition table, and I know that Mary is very fond of the July 26 Coalition and me as well. is that we were able to have a wonderful event at SEIU 73. Unions are big here. And we were able to get a lot of literature out of Take Cuba off the terrorist list and end the blockade at both the March and the DNC and this SEIU 73 event. And we also went to Bud Billiken. I'm familiar with this. This is an all African American parade in Hyde Park, near sort of where the Obama library, et cetera, would be built. And also, Haymarket Books had just this week, he had over 2,000 people attend an event here in Chicago, and saw a bunch of folks from all over. So it's been pretty exciting the last 2 weeks, and I'll end there. Thank you all for having this event.
Thank you, Karen. Think about coming back. So next we have somebody joining us by phone. So 773-409. Please go ahead. And after that, Zarina.
And you may need to hit *6 to unmute. One person.
Do we have any way to unmute them?
They have.
I prompted them, but you do have to push *6. But while they figure that, I see that you have just unmuted yourself, 773.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are you and where are you?
Oh, I'm in Chicago.
Oh, were you
Jake is my
there?
name.
Were you
Yeah,
there?
Jake is my name. Right. I live in Chicago.
So go ahead.
Well, I don't even remember my question now, so I'm gonna pass for now.
Well, but did you go to any of the demonstrations? Do you have any
No.
views on them?
I saw them on television. I wasn't able to get there.
Oh, well, you saw them on television. That's good. At least they were televised.
Yeah.
So next to Zarina. And after that, Joanne, but first Zarina.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So I have two questions, and these are general questions, not about the DNC, but I know there's a lot of talk about how much America spends on military budgets, and I think we should have a comprehensive, including all the nuclear weapons and the spying and so forth. So, I mean, it's clearly almost a $2 trillion budget or something, it sounds like. But empires generally spend how much of their budget on military enterprises? Does anybody have an idea on that? And the second question is, in South Africa, what worked best, the divestment issues, BDS, or student protests in order to get things straightened out there?
Well, I want to say something just to that last point a minute, which is in Western Mass, we are actually having a deshelving campaign at our local food co-op. We picked that because there was a greater chance of success than going with one of the big grocery stores. But that is one thing you can do. And then notice has just come through that the city of Portland, Maine, has just voted to divest from all of their holdings related to Israel. Yep. If I find that link, I'll put it in the follow-up. But then to the rest of your questions, so Brian and Keith can.
That's incredible. I didn't hear that about Portland. I think that could be the start of something really big. One thing that I've been saying is in the last month, Colombia declared it's going to stop giving coal to Israel. Sounds like why is that a big deal? Colombia was the biggest supplier of coal to Israel, and that's where Israel gets most of its electricity. So that's a big deal. That can influence economic actors who, like they do in this country, have a lot of power all over the world. And a lot of times they don't make decisions for moral reasons. They may make decisions about their bottom line. So divestment is absolutely an important part of that strategy. Keith?
Yeah, I heard about this a little bit, and somebody had mentioned it was a lot of the effort came from Peace Action Maine. So I just wanted to mention that.
Here's a
Although
link that I've
fundraiser-
just put in.
Okay,
I've just
good.
put in a link.
Mhm.
But go Peace Action Maine.
Yeah, I was at a fundraiser and somebody, we were talking about Palestine and stuff, and somebody came up and said, this is where we were going. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why, well, I'll put words in your mouth, but that's why I wanted to hear about what everyone's doing in their community, right? Because it's not only the effect that that direct action has on power brokers and decision makers, but you also let people know that these kind of things are possible. Right? There's a lot of people walking around who share these views who don't think that they can have an effect, or they don't know how to get involved or what that would look like. And seeing it and experiencing it and talking to people who are actually taking action inspires people. I mean, you alluded to it earlier, Mary, but that's how I got involved. When MBS came to town, I didn't know what to do about it. I found a group that was protesting and I joined it.
You mean Crown Prince Salman?
Yeah. So that's one of the things that we do here at Mass Peace Action, and what these activists that we're talking about are doing all across the country. They're showing people that it's possible to resist this and that a better world is possible as a result.
So Joanne, you're next.
And I think there might be a link that was just posted. I'd like to, find out how I can get involved in Massachusetts. I don't know if you meet in person or by video, but it sounds as though you might.
Yes, all of the above. Where are you in Massachusetts, Joanne?
I'm right near Fenway. I'm in Brookline.
Incredible. Yeah, I'm in Brighton, so we're not
Oh, no
far
way.
off.
I used to live there.
Yep. So please do get involved. We're going to send a follow-up to this webinar with links that will allow you to sign up.
Meanwhile, I'm just putting in info@masspeaceaction.org.
Okay. Info
Actually can be any one of about half a dozen people, so it reaches us.
Okay,
You'll
great.
get an answer. Drop us a line.
Thank
We'll
you.
plug you in.
Oh, I'm all good. Thank you.
All right,
Hey.
fantastic.
So Jake, did you want to say something again, or is that an old hand?
You might have remembered his question. *6 will do it. There you go.
Yeah, I just want to say I don't think that kind of divestment move will really mean anything. I say that because you're comparing it to what happened in South Africa. It's comparing apples and oranges. South Africa doesn't have any oil, but they've got a tremendous amount of coal, diamonds, molybdenum, bauxite ore, which is used to make aluminum, steel, all kinds of precious metals. So when we started divesting from South Africa, it really hit them in the pocketbook. Israel has none of that, although it's alluded to that Israel may have found some oil in Israel, but other than that, no, they don't have the kind of wealth. They don't have the kind of mineral wealth that South Africa does. And so when you're talking about divestment, what are you divesting from? Is all I'm saying. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact. In fact, Netanyahu said if they stop getting money from the United States, so they'll do it alone.
Well, I'm wondering if somebody among the participants has another view of that.
Yeah, well, you actually just reminded me, Jake, of one thing, because the original question from Zarina, I believe, was talking about divestment as one strategy in our toolkit. And not only is it going to take multiple approaches to end this war in Gaza and change the U.S.-Israel relationship, but it's also great that there are different strategies, because that appeals to different people, right? Only some people are have are apt to follow that strategy. Other people want to get in touch with the media. Other people want to put on education events. Other people want to lobby their members of Congress. Some people want to run for Congress and oppose this U.S. relationship with Israel. There's a million different ways that you can take action. There's some that we haven't even come up with yet. Not everything has been invented yet. And we encourage new ideas at Mass Peace Action, at Peace Actions all across the country. I'm sure you do at AFSC too, Keith. One of the great things about being a grassroots organization is you get your ideas from the volunteers and the activists that come along. So it's like forever renewed. Divestment is just one strategy. I do believe it can have effect. But if that's not your thing, if that's not your bag, there's a lot of other stuff in the bag.
And all of these, I'm sorry, Keith, go ahead.
Well, there is a website and a research place. I'm going to try to put the link in if I can find it real quick, of all the companies that supply that their materials and supplies go toward military things. And there's a whole divestment list of companies that we should think about, sort of that BDS kind of thing. And that there is a movement. And I think Israel is very nervous by it. They make comments and they don't want this to get out. So it does have an effect. And the government is very nervous about that. It's not just mineral wealth and things, it is companies and things of that nature. And so I just want to say that is part of that strategy, and it's there.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to just be material either, Keith. It can be cultural too. There are artists, musical artists, for instance, that have come out and said, I'm not going to do my concert in Israel while this is going on. And that has an effect. It does. That brings in a lot of economic dollars, for instance. And without that, right, these folks that have an interest, that maybe their bottom line, start to oppose this policy. It makes a difference.
So it also raises consciousness, which is, so for instance, when you pass somebody picketing a Shell station, as they're doing in both Greenfield, Mass. And Northampton, Mass., there are actually people who turn away and don't buy the gas. Well, that's a specific thing. That's oil going to Israel. But the other thing it does is it allows people to stop and think and maybe look for more information. So, for instance, in East Hampton, we passed a ceasefire resolution, which has happened in many communities. I can't tell you how many dozens all over the country. But out of that came three different tactics. I mean, it brought in about 300 people in a town of 16,000 to support it, and left about 35 or 40 people active just out of that. And some of them have gone on to show movies about Palestine, Gaza, and produce plays. Others do a standout every Tuesday to draw attention, and some new people have joined because of that. And then still others have started this campaign to take Israeli products off the shelves in the co-op. And something like 800 members of the co-op have signed on to support that. And then they held a teach-in about it. And that's just raising awareness. That doesn't get the United States to stop sending weapons. But eventually, the force of all of this is going to have an effect, because eventually people are going to have to think about who's voting for them. But I want to say, Patricia writes that in Vermont, there's a Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation that includes all kinds of organizations, including Migrant Justice, Free Her, as well as JVP, and Vermonters for Justice in Palestine. And Rana says that she won't take time in the Zoom, but she will send us a synopsis of what's going on in Central and Western Florida, which is great. let's see. Zarina has her hand up again. How long can we go?
I think we're probably approaching the end of it. But if we want to hear from Zarina again, we
That's a good discussion.
Any parting thoughts for us?
Well, I don't have parting thoughts, but I wanted to say, well, I really do think that we need to put together all the amounts that's spent in military just outside the 921 billion. I had to think of these numbers, so it's just mind-boggling. But I love that the banner you made, the red banner that was analogous to the Vermont banner. I think it should be uniform in color, so probably just switch it all up. And also making maybe a smaller model of that same thing, so it could be used in a smaller setting, because that requires a lot of space. So that's my 2 cents.
Those are great suggestions. We already fixed the first one, right? You got some more red.
Yeah,
I bought out everything Michael's had.
Good.
But this has been a terrific webinar. I'm so grateful that you agreed to do it, Keith and Brian, and I'm so grateful to the 50 people who decided to come and everybody who actually decided to actually say something or write something in the chat. And the last thing I'll say is that there is, on September 16th, Patricia writes, there is a webinar that Code Pink is organizing on for individual investors and how to divest. Those of us who might have something we can invest to begin with. That's in the chat. And I would say, when you get the follow-up from this, would you write back, if you'd be so kind, what you're doing in your community so that we can get a sense of it? The Gaza Committee actually it has people in every single congressional district. So the other thing that you can write back to us is what town you're in. And if you want to get involved, we can connect you, if not with people in your exact town, at least with people in your congressional district. And people are doing stand-ups, people are showing films. There's been encampments, there's been divestment. There's lots and lots of letter writing and phone call making. We have these really easy actions where you just put in your zip code and up comes a letter and you just press send. No. Senator Warren and some of the others make you put in whether you're Ms., Mr. or whatever. And you can get involved. And more than that, if we know what you're doing, if there's somebody who comes to us and says, what can I do? We can write to you and say, would you connect with so-and-so? Because we can form a whole network. And I will say, it's no longer the case that so goes Massachusetts, so goes the country. That's not the case anymore. But what is still true is that Massachusetts has an outsized influence in the Democratic Party. So thanks for coming to the webinar, and we hope to see you in the Gaza Committee or one of our standouts or at one of our films or the next webinar.
Hey, can we hear from Hayat real quick? I hate to extend.
Oh, Hayat, I didn't see your hand. I was too busy talking.
No, sorry,
Yes.
it's nothing big. I was just responding to a very appropriate concern that Zarina mentioned, which is the issue of space. And I had written this down earlier, but I just wanted to say again that vertical space is one way to use something like a long banner. So if we are out doing a rally in a square, public square, maybe we could hang it from a building nearby and let it go all the way down. So just saying that that's another dimension that we might be able to use.
It's a great idea. How about in front of Senator Warren and Markey's building? We'll see who's on the top floor and send it out the window.
Yeah, exactly.
Great suggestion.
And then finally, Claire Sheridan adds that Medford for Peace is having a standout in Medford Square every other Thursday from 5:30 to 7. and welcomes those in the Boston area to join.
Thank you.
And with that, we really have to end. I don't want to. Keith and Brian, you have the last words.
Just thank you. Thank you for giving up in the evening on this webinar and giving up the first half of the football game that's on right now. You know.
Yeah. Involve, do something, you know, whatever it is, you can make a difference.
Yeah.
And write to us, stay in touch.